And now on to the Jurassic Park movies. No, I don't have all of them in an individual case, though I want to rectify that because the packaging in this has screwed up my disc for the third movie, so that was annoying. But anyways, getting into the original Jurassic Park, having it been like 12 years since I'd seen that film, it was great to go back and re-experience it. And the transfer for this movie and all the others, man, they did great with those. Like, it's a 30-year-old movie, but you would have thought that it was a little over half that amount with how great the transfer was. Everything looked amazing. The CGI, yeah, it does look not poor, but less good in a couple of instances with the T-Rex, but it's not as bad as you would think because the way that the lighting worked in various situations, like showing the sauropods in early morning light, clearly enough that you see them, but you can't make out like every mark on their skin. That was a great move. And then coloring the background of the final fight with the Velociraptors and then the T-Rex makes a quick appearance, coloring the background in a way that actually helped make the T-Rex not exactly blend in, but look closer to it. That actually helped with that issue. And all the night scenes, that's great what they were able to do there, because you can show the T-Rex with darker tone, but you could still throw in detail, and it's a great blending of the two things. That was just amazing what they were able to do with all the effects in here. They hold up amazingly well. Like, no wonder Lucas was inspired to finally make the prequels, because he's like, technology has finally caught up to what I want to do. Ooh, thanks, Steven. Yeah, it's just an amazing visual movie, and then everything else, what they're able to do with the characters that they had on there, it created an experience that was a lot like the book. Yes, the characters themselves were different in many instances, making Grant a more negative character who doesn't like kids, but actually has a interesting sense of humor, a lot like Harrison Ford, because I seem to recall reading something that said when they originally came up with the role of this character, they were thinking about casting Harrison in here. For whatever reason, that didn't happen, but you see totally homages to Harrison Ford and Indiana Jones in these movies, so it worked out after all, didn't it? And then making Hammond less egotistical and more sorrowful, especially as the movie goes along, because yes, he acts stupid in a couple of instances, especially when he's directing Ellie to find the switch that'll power the park back on, but you can tell that he is trying to help, and then the bit at the end of the movie where even though he's talking to Grant, after careful consideration, Mr. Hammond, I have decided not to endorse your park, and which and Attenborough's like, so have I! Despite him saying that, as they're all getting onto the helicopter, you have that great moment where, from that perspective, everything looks perfectly normal in the park, and Hammond's like, oh man, if that just hadn't happened, I had something really great here. And then Grant walks over to him, and uncharacteristically from what you would expect from him, despite all he's been through in the movie, and when he was first encountering Hammond at the beginning, when he's directing Hammond onto the chopper, it isn't, get in here, dude, just get in. It's, come on. Come on. Like, he knows what Hammond is thinking. Yeah. And you can tell that a part of him does sympathize with him. So, like, that was a great moment. And then Jeff's portrayal of Malcolm, like, it's really interesting to see how he embodies the character, but at the same time he doesn't. It's a very odd line, because there's several characteristics of his portrayal that are Ian Malcolm, and then there's several that are just of Jeff Goldblum, because you just happen to like Jeff in the majority of movies that you see. I mean, I'm sure that he's played a dick character at some point, and I am just completely unaware of it, I'm sure, but yeah, he did great in here, and I am glad that they didn't kill off that Malcolm, because that Malcolm was more aware of things. Because I like how, unlike in the books, he doesn't just tell Cetera, you're very pretty, I could look at your legs all day and be mesmerized. Like, I'm glad that they edited out and made his attraction to her more subtle, where he's doing the water displacement thing on the back of her hand. Like, you could tell that he likes her, but he's not outwardly saying it. Sure, he says it to Grant, but when Grant, without saying the exact words, makes it clear that they're together, Malcolm backs off really fast, showing that he might be somewhat clueless about things, but that he picked on real quick. So, yeah, I love the fact that they did that. The foreshadowing of velociraptors being the main threat in this movie, unlike the T-Rex, because they're trying to portray the T-Rex as the main antagonist, but it felt more like the raptors were in this movie compared to the book. I think that was actually pretty good, because if I recall correctly in the book, it's about equal with how often they show up. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't remember, because it's actually been about the same amount of time since I have seen this movie that I last read the book, and yeah. And then the music that John was able to do in here, yeah, only John could do that. I'm sure there's other well-known composers out there that are just as celebrated as John is, but if you look at John's resume length, that's going to be tough to beat. And yeah, I can easily see why this became the highest grossing movie at the time that it was released. Like, yeah. Good job, guys, you did great. 4.5 critique, but I'm gonna give it a 5 personally because of how great I just got in terms of emotional reactions from this. But you'll notice I never talked about really how this movie does when you compare it to the book. Well, it does a great job at bringing the concepts and a lot of the characters from the book, but of course, given how much they changed the characters and enough of the ending, because the actual way everyone exits the island is pretty similar to how it is in the novel, but of course, characters that are dead in the novel are still alive in this movie, and certain characters are dubbed down, and the violence, it is toned down from the book, but given the kind of book that it is, you can easily put a good amount of violence in there and still read it as like a family book. You know, well, they wanted to make this a family movie, and I get it. So as an adaptation of the book, it has its problems, and I freely admit I would have liked to have seen a more page-by-page like adaptation, because that violence was something that interested me when I was reading it, but what they still did, I really enjoyed. So I can't really fault the movie too much, because if you're able to change a lot of things from the book and still have a lot of people that like it despite having read the book first, and there's quite a lot of us that fit that group, you know, not too many movies can do that. So good job, Stephen and company, you did great. Now, moving on to The Lost World. As an adaptation of the book, this one, it really sucks because it's incredibly loosely based on it, although part of the problem is the fact of what they did with the first movie with making Malcolm and Hammond more likable. Well, that ruins a decent amount of the leftover negativity at the beginning of the second book. So all you can really do is say that the two of them are suffering from bad luck, and then Malcolm gets roped into another adventure. Sure. And had you just done it in a page-by-page adaptation, that would have made for definitely a boring kind of movie, without question. Because, everybody gradually showing up on the island the way that they did. In the book, it works. For a movie, especially with what was occurring in the first movie, it wouldn't have worked. And then the ending in the book, yes, there is a climax, but it's a weaker climax. Because in the book, they're just thinking of, we gotta get off this island, then they lose seemingly the only real way that they can think of to get out of there. But then after getting away from the dinosaurs yet again, they're like, son of a blank, we might be able to get out of here after all. Deus Ex Machina moment. That's not going to fly in a movie like this, so all the changes that they made, I actually do agree with now that I'm a lot older. I recall when I watched this movie like 12 years ago, I was like, yeah, I like bits and pieces of this, but it's way different from the book, and it's way different than the first movie. Well, this rewatch, yeah, it's way different than the book, but as I am alluding to, I feel like that they kind of had to do this, and now as an adult, I appreciate what they did. Like, all the little moments involving, what's-his-face? The guy from Dodgeball, sorry, I don't know his name, but that voice of his is so recognizable. You can pick it from a crowd any day. And then also the guy from Fargo, the silent one, who's also the Russian in Armageddon, the little bits that they did with them, that's nice. The old game hunter, I know that he's a famous actor. I really liked his character in there because it's an interesting moment where he knows that Malcolm and company had sabotaged the team's equipment and put them in a bad position, but when he sees what had happened to them and how they were dangling from the rope of the cliff, he's like, yeah, you got us into this mess, but you're going to help us get out of it. We're all in the same boat now. Loyalties don't matter anymore. Although, of course, his issue with Dodgeball guy, well, it makes sense. They're cut from two different walks of life. And a generation gap. I get it. The bad guy in this movie, though, it's a poor substitute for Dodgson, because yes, the aims of the two of them are the same, but this guy, he's just a greedy guy who just wants to get more money, and didn't really think things through, although I do like the fact that he was more willing to do things over the course of the movie. So he didn't feel totally useless, he just felt idiotic in some instances. So that was a nice plus. Changing Sarah's character, well, they kind of had to, because the way that Malcolm is, you needed somebody to like bring him back to reality, so that's nice. And they do feel like an ex-couple in a lot of instances, so they did well with that aspect. This film's version of Eddie, to be honest, I don't really remember too much about Eddie from the book. So the way that they dealt with this character and had him go out, good job. That was an intense scene. Really intense. Then the combination of the kids into one, given how you have all those original characters, it kind of makes sense. And what they did with the character, that was good. I completely agree with that. And then the ending, yeah, that was intense. Sure, it felt different, but you kind of had to go different. And yeah, I was riveted, even though I knew what happened. I just didn't remember how it happened. I know that's contradictory, but there you are. And yeah, so I was pleasantly surprised to like this movie more than I was anticipating. So, good job. 4 out of 5. And we'll call it good with that. And then, getting to The third movie, which is actually the first Jurassic Park movie I saw because my dad didn't realize that the slash marks meant free. He just thought that that was a decorative design, although... Oh. Okay, I take that back. Like, this logo has T-Rex there, but the DVD that he got had Spinosaurus on it. I distinctly remember that. So, that kind of should have tipped him off, because, I mean, like, dude, how many shirts for this franchise have you seen over the years? I look at the grocery store, I've seen plenty of people with a Jurassic Park shirt. I'm actually fairly impressed with what they were able to do. I agree that it is a stretch. You seriously didn't encounter the pterodactyls in the previous movie or Spinosaurus? Well, they never established just how big the island is. You know, they could have easily just been on the complete other side of the island. So if you can just let that little thing go, then the movie works fine. Because again, this is the factory floor. You know, you only created one Spinosaurus, but you created multiple T-Rexes when you were trying to get it right. You just decided to ditch Spinosaurus because not too many people know about Spinosaurus. Plus, I could have sworn that Spinosaurus was actually a bigger dinosaur than it now. I don't know, I have to look that up. Bringing Grant back, well, it makes sense because he wasn't in the previous movie, so why not give him something more to do? The change in his relationship with Ellie, well, it does add a nice way to begin the movie where you realize that they didn't work out, though they still remain friends. That is possible. David Arquette and Patricia... Why am I blanking on her name right now? No, not Patricia. Courtney Cox, God! Patricia Arquette is his sister. That's a fail, anyway. Yeah, it just one of them worked with the movie to continue it. Breaking them up provided a fresh atmosphere, and you notice that he's trying to get people more interested in the paleontological findings, but everyone's like, there's real dinosaurs out there, why are we using this? It makes sense. And even though back then you didn't really have social media, the way that people behave in that Q&A session, that's just so representative of social media, because it's not what the actual facts are saying, it's just what's trending, you know? It's so much alike that now I get that scene. I get it. And then the way that everyone shows up on the island, yeah, not too much effort is put into it, but this movie is close to a cash grab, you know, and I feel like that it just fit the vibe of it. And what they try to do with Eric and his parents, they provide not the greatest amount of depth, but the effort was there, and I appreciated it, especially Grant. You know, he was anti-kids in the first movie, and you get the idea that he's still not completely in favor of kids, but because of his experiences with Ellie and her son, he's softened to where he even provides Eric with a bit of, Eric, they love you. They wouldn't have come here otherwise. And you can tell that while he hates his parents for dragging him out there, at the same time, there is a part of him that admires them, because he's like, you clearly are not cut out to do this kind of thing, and yet you're out here and you're trying. Like, yeah. Huh? Not good people, but at the same time, they're trying to find their kids. Can you really blame them? Yeah. And then the dynamics on the island shifting from Spinosaurus to the pterodactyls, bringing it back towards the end. And what they did with Billy, like, that was good, yeah. But I do have one other critique about the movie, that I kind of forgot about, but then when I was reading the Wikipedia page, yes, I know it's the Wikipedia page, but sometimes I can help you out, you know. There was a little blurb from a Sam Neill interview where he's like, the ending of it? Don't like that. Because, yeah, just the Deus Ex Machina of the soldiers just showing up and you know that everything's going to be fine, and then you just see them boarding the ship. Billy just appears out of nowhere and he's like, hey, I found your hat. I mean, like, it's a nice, humorous way to end the movie, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, after all that effort the characters put in, you know, I get it. I would have liked a better ending, but what could they have done? I don't know. I really do not know. Yeah. So, it's not the greatest movie. It's definitely a lot more of a cash grab, but at the same time, the movie knows what it is. It doesn't try to hide that, and for the type of movie that it is, was more effort put into that besides the ending? Absolutely, yeah. So, yeah. I'll still give you props for this one, just not as much. So, personal 4 out of 5, yeah. Critique, part of me wants to say 3, part of me feels like that I'm being a little harsh on it, so I think the best thing for me to do is to not rate a critique, honestly, and I have done this before. When I reviewed Batman 1989, I didn't give it a rating at all, on either scale, because I was too conflicted. I seem to recall that I did that for the Nightmare on Elm Street remake. So, yeah. Sometimes you just can't rate something. Holy crap, I was able to talk about these movies more than I expect. Did. Well, there you go. See you for the next trilogy.